Okay, Elena, are we clear?
Almost.
Almost.
And we're clear.
Fantastic, thank you. Good evening. I'm calling this public hearing to order in accordance with the Massachusetts Wetlands Protection Act, MGLC 131, Section 40, and the Boston Wetlands Ordinance, Boston City Code Ordinances, Chapter 7-1.4. The Boston Conservation Commission will hold a virtual public hearing this evening on March 6th, 2024, to review the following projects to determine what conditions, if any, the commission will impose in order to protect the interests of the public and private water supply, groundwater, prevention of pollution, flood control, prevention of storm damage, protection of fisheries and land containing shellfish, and protection of wildlife habitat. Excuse me. Um, the public hearing that we're holding now will be followed by a regular meeting. In accordance with Chapter 107 of the Acts of 2022, we are conducting this meeting online. To ensure public access to the deliberations of the Conservation Commission, the public may access this call through telephone or video conferencing. Additionally, the meeting is being recorded. If you do not wish to be recorded, please turn off your video. Members of the public may have an opportunity to ask questions and provide public comment on applications and discussions. To do so, please raise your hand or type in the chat in the application via the Zoom meeting platform. If you are calling in and cannot use the platform, you can raise your hand by pressing *9 and *6 to unmute yourself. Send your questions to staff via email at cc@boston.gov. For the record, I am Michael Parker, Chair of the Commission. Could staff please identify themselves?
Elena Itamari with the Environment Department.
Environment Department.
Great, thank you. Okay, I'll call the roll of commissioners who are present. Commissioner Sullivan.
John Sullivan.
Commissioner Long.
Nick Long.
Commissioner Wilson.
Mike Wilson.
Commissioner Richmond.
Alice Richmond.
Commissioner Herbst.
Ann Herbst.
And I don't think Commissioner Conan is with us yet, is he?
He is not.
Okay, thank you. Okay, first item on the agenda is notice of intent for DEP file number 0061979 and Boston file number 2024-003 from Weston and Sampson Engineers on behalf of the Boston Parks and Recreation Department for the proposed playground, park, and climate resiliency improvements located at 75 Alfred Street, Charlestown, Mass. Resource areas or land subject to coastal storm flowage, coastal bank, waterfront area, riverfront area, 100-foot buffer to coastal bank, and 100-foot buffer to coastal bank. Nope, that's a repeat. Okay. Who's here on behalf of the applicant?
I am Brandon Kunkel with Weston and Sampson, but I do believe B. Chatfield is also on for Boston Parks.
I'm here for Boston Parks.
Great.
And I also have two colleagues, Haley Page and Gracie Schwartzberg on the call.
Okay, fantastic.
Um,
A few things. First of all, I think Commissioner Long, you probably have something to say here before we get going.
For the record, yeah, I'm going to have to recuse myself because I work for the applicant.
Fantastic, thank you. And let the record reflect that Commissioner Conan has joined us. Good evening.
Good evening.
Okay. Okay, Brandon, I see you have about 19 slides. You know what our our level of education here, so I'm sure
it'll be quick, I promise.
Here. Yeah, that you can get through. Yeah, thank you.
And I'll let B just sort of open it up and then I'll take over from there.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Thank you everyone for listening to us here tonight. We're really excited to present Ryan Playground. We are just fresh off of getting our MEPA certificate and excited to present to you guys tonight. This project has been around in our public process since 2021. So we are eager to move forward, but excited to understand what you guys have to say. I'm going to pass it off to Weston and Sampson.
Great, thanks so much, B. Yes, we are here tonight on behalf of Boston Parks, and we'll just go through the overall project, and then we'll open it up to you folks for questions. Next slide. Just real quick, 75 Alfred Street, Charlestown, Mass. Sits adjacent to the Mystic River. It is a total park improvements project and a climate resiliency project, as we noted in the opening. Next slide. Some existing conditions include the ball fields, the hockey rink, a playground, Eversource head house, edge conditions along the Shraff City Center, an existing harbor walk, and an existing seawall. Next slide. There is an existing parking lot. We are reducing it by 38 parking spaces and keeping 6 total parking spaces for emergency vehicles and accessible parking. We are upgrading the stormwater system throughout the entire park, and we will talk about that. We will be installing a berm for climate resilience within the buffer area, which is the key triggers for this evening, but it's for climate resilience, erosion resistance, plantings will be provided. We will be providing ADA and MAAB standard walkways and pathways throughout the entire park, as there aren't many now. We'll be providing public spaces throughout, including 2 overlook decks along the Mystic River, as well as a river walk and additional plazas and park entries along the berm. The remaining 6.3 acres of open space for athletic fields include 2 natural grass fields, Little League field, 1 youth adult field, soccer field, and they will all be supporting local youth leagues within the city. A universal accessible playground. We'll be relocating the existing hockey rink, adding 2 pickleball courts and an adult fitness, a splash pad, and then storage, and then installing 160 native trees. Next slide. Along the top of the berm, and unfortunately the slide is cut off because of the cameras, but we are proposing a river walk. The berm will be vegetated heavily along the Mystic River side in order to reinforce the berm itself from erosion, as well as provide natural habitat. The river walk will be approximately 6.5 to 7.5 feet above existing grade, and that is dictated by the 2070 sea level rise elevations of elevation 22. And we will be installing walls as part of constructing the berm in order to hold up the Riverwalk, and that'll be supported on lightweight fill and ground improvements, which are all within your jurisdiction. Next slide. And if Haley is on and able to speak, I would actually like to hand it over to her.
Sure thing. I'm here as long as everyone can hear me. So I am the wetland scientist who worked to pull together these permits. So I'm going to speak just very briefly through some of the impacts that we're proposing within your jurisdictional areas. So within the 25-foot waterfront area, we are proposing 22,832 square feet of impacts. These impacts are associated with the proposed climate resiliency measures, including the vegetated berm, the seawall, and the river walk that Brandon was just mentioning. Additionally, we'll be impacting land subject to coastal storm flowage. 115,512 square feet will be impacted due to the climate resiliency measures and the construction of the updated recreational fields. Within the 25-foot riverfront area, we are also proposing 22,832 square feet. The impacts are associated with the climate resiliency measures that were the same as with mentioned above. And finally, the coastal bank, we are posing 929 linear feet of impact, which is due to the installation of the elevated river walk that will align with the limits of the coastal bank. One thing I just wanted to point out is that even though it seems we're posing the same amount of impacts in the waterfront area and the riverfront area, there is the same footprint, but they're spread differently throughout the limits of the park as displayed in the plans. If we could flip ahead to the next slide, please. This slide, which I think is also blocked by the video a bit. So this is how we look to outline the different resource areas to give a better understanding of the limits. The orange line, if you can see it, is the 25-foot riverfront area. The red line represents the 25-foot waterfront area, and the green line represents the 100-foot buffer zone associated with coastal bank, coastal beach / tidal flats. If we could flip ahead to the next slide. Now this is showing the footprint of the land subject to coastal storm flowage. So you can see that this resource area extends further into the park than the other resource areas identified. If we could flip to the next slide, please. This is also looking to show the coastal bank limits that we will be impacting as a part of this project, which I think is blocked as well. So let's flip ahead to the next slide.
Also, sorry, Haley, I don't mean to interrupt. I just want to make sure I'm seeing the full slide deck. I was just wanting to make sure, can everybody else see the full graphics so that you can all see the plans and everything? It looks normal on my end. I just wanted to see how everyone else was seeing it. All good?
It does. Hold on, I'm looking at the same. It's cut out. I can't see. I think on this one on the bottom it says maybe no, it's not boring location, but I don't see a legend on the bottom on this. In the NOI, I see legends on the bottom of these graphics.
I'm not sure that we pulled legends into these because my intent was kind of to point to the areas, but I know that everyone's Zoom is a little bit different setups where some people's videos are on the side, some are on the bottom, some are just hovering. So
okay, I just as long as commissioners and any members of the public can see the full plan set, we should be good to go. I can see the whole graphic. I just wanted to make sure that that was good on everyone else's end as well.
Okay.
I think I see the whole graphic too, but I don't know what I'm not seeing. So I don't know if I can answer this
Fair point.
question confidently.
Yeah, is there a dialogue
where
box?
the edge of the park is essentially where the edge that is closest to the river, that's where it would be cut off on, at least on my screen, that's where it is. But I'm not sure.
I can see the whole, excuse me, I can see the whole screen, but your voice comes and goes.
Yeah.
Sorry about that. I guess I'll get closer to my computer. Sorry if you're just kind of looking at my eyebrows. So I guess if everyone can see, just moving ahead, I wanted to touch base on some of the tree removal and tree plantings that we are proposing. So this image shows in green circles, the 40 trees that will remain or be saved and replanted among the site. And the red X's represent trees that will be removed, being 38 trees, for they were not deemed to be in healthy condition. 38 trees will be removed, and of the total of 78 trees existing on site, 40 of them will remain on the site. If we could flip ahead to the next slide, it's kind of just a reiteration of these existing trees to remain. Upon the completion of the work, there will be 160 native trees at the site, and this can be found in the plan set on sheets L120 and L160 through L162 are the planting sheets where we can look, in more detail on those tree plantings. But, for the purpose of actual being able to read this figure, we didn't feel 160 points was wanted to show on this slide.
Haley, is there an arborist report in the NOI? I'm not finding one, but it's
no. We worked with the city or Boston Parks arborist to identify those trees that were not in the best of shape or would be impacted by construction as a result, and then also the trees that were non-negotiable and needed to be kept on site and preserved.
Okay, did he give you a report or was it more of a site inspection and then he flagged trees?
It was a site walk.
It was a site inspection.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, at this point, if we could flip ahead to the next slide, I'm going to hand it back over to Brandon now. Thank you.
As I mentioned previously, the stormwater system will be quite robust compared to what is out there now, which is really only a few catch basins and area drains. Most of it actually just sheet flows directly towards the Mystic River. We will be segregating the site essentially into 3 zones and then connecting into 3 existing outfalls, or 2 existing outfalls, I apologize, that are within Boston Water and Sewer easements. And as we indicated earlier, all the fields will be natural grass, but they will have a subsurface drainage system to help keep the water moving. But we are encouraging infiltration to the greatest extent possible, as this is a filled land area. Just historically, it is considered urban fill. There is some contaminated soils down deep, very far down, about 25 feet deep. So we aren't exactly encouraging infiltration to the greatest extent possible, but we are more or less putting in this infiltration system to recover after storm events. Within the small parking lot area, we will have a lined chamber system to help collect and mitigate the runoff from the parking lot before it enters into the outfall system. But in general, most of it is just captured through area drains and catch basins, and then we'll tie into the existing outfalls that are there today. We will be installing new manholes with tide gates on them to mitigate during storm events the recharge back into the site. Next slide. And then I just wanted to touch quickly on the resilience piece, because I know that's very important to the city. We did look at the 100-year 1% storm, the 4-year 25% storm, and I'm gonna have to move my mouse, the 100-year 100% chance storm. So, and we looked at all those through 2070, 2050, and then current conditions. So next slide. This is just really the topography as it is today, and you can see the low-lying areas up against the Mystic River, and then particularly out in Alfred Street. And as we jump to the next few slides, you'll see why these all make sense and why they're at risk. So this is the current condition as it is today with regards to sea level rise and storm events. Now, to my knowledge, there has never been flooding on the site as it is today, but there is 2 major flood pathways that have been identified through previous studies, and they are on the adjacent site, but we are aware of that as this is a coastal resilience project. We are combating that through that berm construction, as I noted. But you can see here today, there is some risk to the site itself, but more importantly, I just wanted to point out, like, until the abutters and other adjacent property owners put in their mitigation and resilience measures, that the site still will remain vulnerable. But it is just a key or a piece in the puzzle of resilient coastline for the city. So this is its current conditions as it relates to land subject to flooding during storm events. Next slide. This is the proposed condition in existing day data as it relates to storm events. So you see that's automatically mitigated. The park itself will be protected, but you can see during future storm events, the Shrap City Center really does become the thoroughfare for flooding into the city itself, but we have mitigated it from the city side. I mean, the park side. Next slide. And then this is for 2050. And what's interesting about this is, even though we are building the berm, until those measures are put into place by adjacent properties, the park still is vulnerable, and it will flood from around our property and not necessarily through our property. Next slide. And then this is the 2070 condition, where you can see, I mean, the 2050 condition in the existing or the proposed conditions. So you can see the berm in place. So, and that's why we have the robust stormwater system below the fields and encouraging the movement of the water for recovery. But the park will still be able to capture some of that flooding and take in storage during storm events. And then the intent is that it recovers quickly following those storm events. Next slide. And that is it. And I will hand it back over to you. Thank you for your time this evening. I know we probably went a few minutes long, but we felt it was important to tell the whole story.
Okay, great. Thank you. No, I appreciate it. And thank you for all the materials. It's not often we get Gaining Ground, Nancy Seychelles book in an NOI. So appreciate that little piece of history. Okay, quick question for you. It's a MCP site. You've got an RTN number assigned. And so we need an LSP to supervise this work. How's that going to be handled?
Weston Sampson will have an LSP available. Again, to our knowledge and based on the paperwork that was provided, those contaminants are further down, and we don't anticipate coming in contact with them, but we will have an LSP available during portions of the excavation, certainly.
Yeah, and I think the key there was, to your knowledge, you don't really know until you actually start excavating.
That's
right?
correct.
Yeah.
That's correct.
Okay. As far as the retaining wall, that's owned by Schrafft's, right?
I'm sorry?
The retaining wall that's owned by Schrafft's, that's their responsibility.
Yeah, that they own that wall. That's correct.
Okay. And then as far as you said, to your knowledge, there's been no flooding there. I've been down there frequently. To my knowledge, it hasn't been flooded from a storm, but the infiltration is horrible.
That's correct.
So the field is always wet.
Correct. And that's related to the conditions of the soil types that are out there. They're just very dense, urban fill type materials, certainly.
Yep. And so you're confident or fairly confident the new stormwater system that you're putting in place is going to alleviate that.
That's correct. So we are raising the fields approximately 18 to 24 inches, and so we are elevating it above the existing soils, and then in combination with a highly porous sand root zone mix for the fields, plus the lateral drains, we expect that those fields would be able to take on substantially more water than what they receive now, and somewhere along the lines between 3 to up to 6 inches an hour.
Okay. Wow. Okay. As far as the vegetation and the trees, salt tolerant?
Yes. We worked with CZM to develop a plant palette along the coast.
Okay. Okay. I think that's all I have for now. Elena, do you have anything?
I didn't have anything on this, and we also hadn't received any comments from the public, at least via email.
Okay, great, thank you. Commissioner Sullivan?
Yeah, I know you guys have been working with staff over at Boston Water Sewer. Where is the tide gate on the water and sewer tide gate on that line?
So we'll be installing a new manhole structure. The tide gate would be within that manhole structure.
Yeah, location.
It'll be on the land side of the berm. So we'll have about 35 feet of pipe that is between the tide gate and the actual face of the wall.
Yeah, okay. And has that all been approved?
No, so we've submitted to you folks for site plan approval, but we just submitted it in conjunction with this hearing this evening. So it's still in review with you folks.
Right. So if that's where it's located, how does a truck that needs to maintain this thing and replace it and all get there? And,
sure. So all walks are minimally, well, I shouldn't say, there is a service loop where the walks are going to be vehicular rated. They're 8 feet wide minimally. And so there is, for whether or not it's you folks servicing it or Boston Parks maintaining the fields, there will be truck access.
Yeah, okay. So we'll see that on the plans that just submit to the commission, or we can make comments there.
That's correct.
Correct.
And, all right. Just I guess minimally it's 8 feet, but we do go up to 10 feet wide along the perimeter. So there is a vehicular loop per se.
Yep. And any new trees I didn't catch on the new trees, are they going on top of that easement anywhere along the easement?
I believe in your easement, no. I can't say the same for Eversource, but we're working through that with them.
Yeah, put as many as you want on Eversource. It's not an issue with us.
Okay. Thanks, John.
That's all I had.
Great, thank you. Commissioner Wilson?
Yeah, thanks for the presentation. Really appreciate the sort of well-worked landscape plans, and I think it's going to be a good project for establishing some precedents for similar landscapes as we go forward. Couple questions in terms of the like section profile, basically working back from the seawall on that vegetated berm. Some of the, usually we see stuff that's pretty beefy in terms of like, you know, cobbles and gravel and that type of thing, and plants just inserted into that, which is, you know, basically a rock garden.
Sure.
So I appreciate the alternative. I was just wondering in terms of like lightweight fill and planting soil, whether they're going to be able to maintain that 4-to-1 relationship, or what sort of your plan is to help them maintain that.
Yeah, so that 4-to-1 is actually a recommendation by CZM based on their research and data and related, because we actually had a slightly steeper berm at 3-to-1 and fortified, sort of your classic riprap with planting.
Okay.
As you described. CZM wasn't necessarily keen on that. They recommended minimally a 4-to-1 and thought that just given the way the waves are going to be coming in during storm events, as this is technically the Mystic River and not direct impact from the ocean per se, while somewhat, you know, treacherous because it is still ocean water and open, but much less. So they felt it was appropriate to just do more robust planting. We'll have temporary measures in place through matting or whatever, but the 4-to-1 is sort of their recommendation with planting that is intended to be able to take on those storm events and not erode.
Okay. I'm thinking also just from like, you know, pluvial, like rain events, like just getting, you know, sort of rutting and washout and stuff like that in terms of, you know, with like landscape fabrics or whatnot. Are you like, how are you gonna, is there a plan for sort of monitoring, maintaining, say for the first 3 years or something, to make sure that all of those plants kind of get well established? Because it's obviously
Sure,
contingent
certainly.
on their root zones.
Yeah, so we can work with Boston Parks, and whether or not it's, you know, through the contractor installing them and owning and you know, maintaining them for a certain duration, or Boston Parks takes over at a certain point in time. But we've are traditionally putting together, you know, maintenance plans and recommended practices for those types of situations, certainly.
Okay. Is there any like irrigation there? I'm just trying to think, because like
Not
you guys put a
necessarily,
lot
not
of,
on the berm side or the water side of the berm. On the interior side, specific to the athletic fields, there
got
is.
it. Okay, so yeah, there's no like hose hookups or something for a drought
Correct.
sort of thing. Okay. I guess you guys did put a good whatever amount of effort into putting into like a diverse plant mix and stuff like that. Is that something that in terms of maintenance will be tried to be maintained, or if it like, you know, something wins because it loves that facing the power plant on the Mystic there, it's going to win out? Or is that something that you guys will actively try to seek to, you know, maintain that variety?
I think we're trying to improve the variety of plants that we can maintain, because we understand that there is going to be a broader palette of plants going in to try and, you know, work with more sort of green infrastructure applications. Right now we're sort of at our learning point. So I think this would be a good, you know, opportunity for like an extended maintenance contract with the contractor, maybe like a 2-year establishment period kind of thing. And then depending on where our Parks's sort of learning curve goes, either it may be one of those, like whatever species win out and then they flourish, or at that point we may have sort of a better background in sort of coastal plant type maintenance.
Okay. Yeah, no, that all sounds good that you guys have thought through that. Appreciate it. I don't have any further questions.
Thank you. Commissioner Conan?
Thank you, Chair Parker. Appreciate the climate resilience features here. Did I hear that there would be a seawall, and would that be at a higher, would that rise to a higher elevation than the river walk?
It doesn't have, so there would be a new wall, and it's about halfway up the berm, and it's really a driven factor by the fact that we're cramming a lot of program space that's being requested by the community along the water. They want more access to the water. They and more fields, whatever it might be. It's a small wall. It's not technically a barrier or a seawall. It's holding up portions of the Riverwalk itself, and that's just because we weren't able to make the topography work. But I think at its greatest, it's 18 inches along the berm. I will say, particularly at the Eversource piece, and this is the only way we were able to preserve the resilience around the Eversource head house. That is going to be a new seawall, and that will be up to elevation 28. So it will be a significant wall, but they weren't able to adjust the elevation of the head house. So that is staying at the existing grade as it is today. And so we have to, in order to protect the site and the head house itself, have to build a wall around it. But otherwise, it's all natural berm.
Yeah, around it, because water could, as you pointed out, come in a different direction.
Absolutely,
to that area.
That's correct.
The 18 inches wall, what is that for? Is it like a safety thing for the
No,
community?
it's actually below the walk, the river walk. It's just holding up the river walk because we couldn't make the grades work and still provide a wide enough river walk along the top of the berm.
So it's a retaining wall.
That's correct.
Okay, that's helpful. And I was wondering, I mean, if you were sharing 500-year storm, 1,000-year storm events, and showing how the site would fare under those conditions, that would be one thing. But you shared like the 25% and 100% storms. What was the reasoning behind that?
Those were driven by just through the MEPA process, and those were the percentages of storms and timelines that they wanted us to look at. I mean, we did look all the way out to 2070, and that's how we arrived at the elevation that the berm is shown at. But you'll see by 2050, unless other participants along Boston Harbor, it'll be the same condition in 2070, just deeper water versus 2050. So, we'll call it 25 years between now and 2050 that our neighbors are hopefully able to put in some resilient measures to protect the perimeter of the park.
I see. So you were showing that because even in the 1 year or the 100% storm event could be a concern. Normally, I would think if you're protecting a site against 1% storm, then you're obviously protecting it against a higher probability event, right? So correct. I guess you're showing this because of the vulnerability due to the adjacent sites not being protected.
That's correct. Yeah, the intent is that, we are filling in land subject to coastal storm, floodplain. And the point is just, it's either going to be resilient and protect the flood pathways through the city of Charlestown, or we, up until the point where the abutters are putting in their resilient measures, the park will still be able to take a certain amount of volume because the water will come in from around the sides of the berm. But when the next abutter puts their resilient measures in place and ties in, and we've had several conversations with the Schraft folks, and they do have an intent to tie into our berm and at the right elevation and continue the river walk and connections. We don't know their timeline, but we are just a piece in the coastal puzzle.
Sure, and nor is there an agreement, I imagine.
I'll let B answer that one.
An agreement with Schrafts?
Yeah.
Not yet. We've been coordinating with them along the way just to ensure that our designs are complementary, but we need to meet with them and speak with them to sort of have a temporary access so that once we install our berm and our resilient measures, we'll be able to use their parking lot for some of the site parking, which we already do, and that's part of their, I'm not sure, I'm not good at these chapter, article, whatever it is, but part of their understanding is that they need to provide the park with, I think it's 7 spaces. So we need to ensure that accessibility from their parking lot is maintained. And so we're working on that. We're going to meet with them in 2 weeks, I think it is, Brandon, right?
So for access reasons, there seems like there's an agreement you have or you're working towards, but
We're
for
working towards
vulnerability
it.
reasons, there isn't one.
That is true. Yeah, that is the case.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, Chair Parker.
Thank you. B, were you referring to Article 80? Is that part of their
Yes.
commitment? Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Commissioner Richmond.
Yeah, first of all, I would just like to join with the other commissioners in thanking you for this very thorough presentation and the thoughtfulness that has gone into it. I'm going to ask a couple of questions about the trees because I wasn't exactly sure adding and subtracting as you were making the presentation. So there are 70 some odd trees on the property right now, of which 35 are going to be cut down and removed. Do I understand that correctly?
That's correct.
Okay. And so when it's all over, are you going to be planting new trees to replace those trees? I think I understood that, but I want to be sure. And how big are the trees that you're planting?
Sure. At the end of the project, I believe we are current in Haley and Gracie, please correct me if my numbers are slightly off. We are proposing 165 total new trees, so definitely a plus beyond the 38 that we're taking out. And they will range, but I believe our minimum caliper size is 2.5 inches to 3-inch caliper minimally.
Okay. And I think there was some discussion already on this, but I just want to kind of focus it on the trees for a moment. And your contract with whomever will be planting these trees would also include a maintenance for a couple of years to make sure that they live, right?
That's what B was referring to earlier.
2 year. Yes, it would be
typically it's 1 year, but as B
We've
noted,
moved to 2 year though. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, because whoever has said this before me is obviously correct. I mean, it's a kind of a difficult site. I mean, you know that better than I do in terms of its open to the elements, and there is a plan as well to replace the trees that don't make it.
So there will definitely be a warranty period beyond the maintenance period. Typically it's about a year. So if we are maintaining the trees for 2 years under a contract, the warranty would extend for a 3rd year. And any
sorry, the way we have it is that the 2 year maintenance period would be the 2 year warranty. But then if they had to replace any trees because of them dying for whatever reason, the 2 year warranty period would then re-up basically. So hypothetically you could have decades of replacement, which we're not looking for, but the idea is that if they hit maybe the 3rd tree, we would probably say this is not a good location for a tree and try and put it somewhere else.
Yeah. So occasionally the fact that I've been a lawyer for so many years comes up and hits me in the head. So I just want to ask that in your documents with whomever is going to be responsible for this, that all of these, years and extensions and whatever are going to be literally included in the document, so that somebody who was not privy to this conversation but needs to enforce what you're suggesting is going to occur, it's going to be in writing, correct?
That is correct. And we've just finished updating our tree specification. We're working on trying to make all of our tree requirements more robust and all fully documented. So yes, we've just gone through that.
Okay, that's great. I don't have any more questions. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Commissioner Herbst?
Couple questions. One is that I saw that the plans show a limit of work out into the Mystic River, and I was wondering what that's about, if there's work happening out there.
I think you may be referring to, yes, and that's only because we're installing a turbidity curtain. No work is actually intended to be within the Mystic River. We're stopping at the face of wall of the existing seawall. But just for the intent of installing the turbidity curtain, I believe the limit of work on the actual drawings, and not the graphic plans we showed tonight, but on the actual drawings we submitted, shows it going into the Mystic River, but that's only to include the turbidity curtain.
Okay, thank you. And the other, I just wanted to check on the waterfront area. You had asked for a variance, which isn't really a term for us. Despite all the material you provided, I found it hard to figure out what exactly was happening in the waterfront area. I think it's maybe somewhat easier to see on one of the slides you provided, but I guess I just wanted to understand if there's something I don't understand. It looks to me like there's walkway and there's vegetation of one kind or another, but your language suggests that you think you're in some way not in compliance with our waterfront language. So I wanted to ask about that.
I can jump in on this one, Brandon.
Yeah, go for it.
If you can hear me, I'm going to get close again to my computer. So it is essentially majority within that 25-foot waterfront area. It is majority of the berm, and there's a small portion of the proposed recreational fields, being the baseball fields and the soccer fields that fall within. The reason we requested the variance is due to the alterations taking place in the area. For the bylaws mentioned that no alteration should take place within this area. So that was just to kind of cover us, to make sure we were discussing with the commission that we are all in agreement that we can proceed with this work within this waterfront area that is a Boston regulated buffer or resource area.
Okay. I'm satisfied with the work you're doing. I don't see the ball field in the waterfront area.
It's just literally the top, like it's the batting diamond. I'm not sure.
I'm sorry, I lost
for that, but it's just a small area of it.
I didn't hear that.
You're breaking up, Haley.
Sorry, I'm not sure what's going on with my speakers. There's a small portion of the batting areas that fall within that zone that is associated with the baseball field. But it's very small.
That's not the buffer area, the 100-foot buffer?
No. Oh, you're correct. Sorry, I was looking at the wrong materials on my screen. That's the 100-foot that is there. So the 25-foot is just the berm.
Okay, and it looks like, is that the walkway that's curving through and?
Correct.
Okay, and what's in the grayish color?
If I'm not exactly sure what you're looking at.
It's next to it abuts the walkway, and it sort of comes down towards the field.
Is it circular shape?
Well,
I think it's the walking path, maybe.
Okay.
Around the fields. Is that?
Could be.
Are we allowed to go back?
That's what it looks like to me. Yeah, can we go back to the slide?
Just to the site plan. Do you guys know what page it's on of the presentation?
Is it the scope of work, climate resiliency that you're looking
pretty
at?
early.
Yeah.
I believe it's slide 5.
This one. Oh.
Either one's fine.
Yeah.
But I
Slide
was looking,
17. Slide 17.
when I said gray, it was the slide you just passed.
Yeah. Right there.
Yeah. I don't know how to tell you where it is though.
Sure. Are you
Sort of in
talking about, so you see the brown, we'll call it elbow down at the bottom of the screen?
Yeah, so it's almost 2/3 up from there.
And there's a little appendage coming off the Riverwalk. It's almost a teal green color.
Yep, and then above that.
And then above that, and then there's a brown, we'll call it semicircular ellipse shape.
Okay, so there's what is the teal thing, and then what's just
The
above
teal
it?
thing is a splash pad
Okay.
adjacent to the playground, which will be spray to drain, and then that
Okay.
goes, to the outfall.
Okay.
And then I'm not sure what gray area you might be referring to.
I
Maybe the
think it may look
storage.
purple. Is
Okay,
it the play?
purple.
The purple area
Right.
is the playground adjacent to the splash pad.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Yep.
Thank you for bearing with me. I
No,
don't have
that's
any further,
fine. That's completely fine.
no further questions, thank you.
Great, thank you. Excuse me. Elena, any raised hands?
I don't see any raised hands, and nothing has come in during the hearing in the inbox, so.
Okay, great. So with that, I would entertain a motion to accept, to issue the order of conditions for this project and close the hearing.
So moved.
We have a second. Great. Okay, thank you. Commissioner Sullivan,
Aye.
Commissioner Wilson,
Aye.
Commissioner Conan,
Aye.
Commissioner Richmond,
Aye.
Commissioner Herbst,
Aye.
and I vote aye, so that carries 6-0. Okay, thank you and good luck.
Great, thanks all.
Thank
Have a great
you.
evening.
Thank you.
Okay, next item on the agenda is a request for a determination of applicability from Woods Hole Group on behalf of the Stone Living Lab for the proposed installation of living seawall tiles to enhance biodiversity of sea life located at 0 Northern Avenue in South Boston and 300 Condor Street in East Boston. Who's here on behalf of the applicant?
Hi, Chair Parker. That would be myself as well as Leslie Fields.
Great. Hi, Joe. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Good, thank you. So before we get started, want to just make one comment. I think that you've communicated with staff, or staff has communicated this with you. This, first of all, fantastic project. Very exciting. Looking forward to hearing more about it. I do have to say that just 2 weeks ago, we had Eastie Farms in, and they were proposing installing tiles at a location on the harbor. They were vegetated tiles, but they required an NOI. So just want to give you fair warning. Would love to see a compelling case as to why we would be issuing a negative determination of applicability as opposed to having you come in with an NOI on this. So
I appreciate that context. I hope we can provide that compelling case, and yeah, we'll get to it now, I guess.
great, fantastic, thank you.
So thank you, Chair Parker, and good evening, everyone. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Great, thank you. So I'm Joe Christo, Managing Director at the Stone Living Lab. Thank you so much for having us at this hearing tonight. I'm going to take 1 minute to share a little context about the lab before passing it to my colleague Leslie Fields to discuss this Living Seawalls research project. The Stone Living Lab is an innovative partnership that researches nature-based approaches for climate adaptation. In addition to our research and monitoring work, we also focus on education and engagement, policy innovation, and climate preparedness. Members of our partnership include the UMass Boston School for the Environment, Boston Harbor Now, the National Park Service, Massachusetts Executive Office of Energy and Environmental Affairs, Massachusetts Department of Conservation and Recreation, and the City of Boston. Now, the City of Boston is an especially close research partner on 2 of our 4 research and monitoring projects, our real-time monitoring on Boston Harbor project, and the project we are here to discuss tonight, our Living Seawalls project. I'll pass it to Leslie to discuss our Living Seawalls project now.
All right, thank you, Joe. My name is Leslie Fields. I work with the Woods Hole Group, and we are working closely with Stone Living Lab on some of these projects. Me in particular, I'm helping with the permitting side of things. So here tonight to talk about this research project for living seawall tiles. So next slide, please. So this is a research project, as both Joe and I said, and it's to install or retrofit some existing seawalls within the city of Boston with these living seawall panels to understand ways and research ways in which we can increase the ecological value of existing seawalls. The project is expected to be in place for just under 3 years, so from spring 2024 to spring of 2027. Next slide, please. The goals of the project are to evaluate ways to improve intertidal biodiversity. So that means to create areas where organisms can provide shelter or find shelter from predators and sunlight. So for small marine organisms to, find shelter from these things. Another goal is to investigate ways to green up the gray coastal infrastructure around the city of Boston. So that means modifying the texture of some of the existing coastal infrastructure to potentially reduce damaging effects of increased wave energy and erosion. And then finally, as Joe said, one of the missions of Stone Living Lab is to provide education on living shorelines. So this project will provide opportunities for the public and youth to come to the site, visit, and learn about the research that we're doing there. Next slide. So we have 2 sites where we're proposing to install these living seawall tiles. The first one is the Condor Street. It's called the Urban Wild Site. It is in the city of East Boston. So this site here has seawalls on the east and west facing parts of the site, and then a revetment on the north facing part of the site. And we're proposing to install 60 panels on the east side, shown here on this graphic, with 2 control areas covering a total of 120 square feet. And then on the west facing side, 60 panels with 1 control area. So those panels, again, occupy 120 square feet of this coastal bank area. The panels will be installed in the intertidal zone between mean high and mean low. And I've got pictures here on both sides of the slide to show what that seawall looks like on the east facing and west facing side. And just real quickly, the resource areas are shown on these plans. So the seawalls are considered coastal banks. And then in front of those, we've got coastal beach tidal flat areas. Obviously, further out in the water, we've got land under the ocean. And there are a couple of areas of salt marsh that are sort of adjacent to these areas we're proposing to install tiles. Also shown on this graphic are the temporary storage and staging areas. So both of those areas for this project, for this site, are landward of those revetments or seawalls in the upland. All right, next slide, please. So this is just looking straight on at one of the installations at this site, and you can see that the tiles are within the intertidal zone. The construction that we're proposing is going to be on the coastal bank resource and also in land subject to coastal storm flowage. And then access to the site for both installation and monitoring will be across the coastal bank. They'll be walking on the coastal beach during times of low tide, and obviously accessing it through land subject to coastal storm flowage. Next slide, please. This is the other site, Fan Pier site in Boston proper, facing Boston Harbor. So there's this funny little well area that was created with the seawalls there. And there's a walkway if you're going along the harbor walk that sort of goes over an open area. The water's allowed to go into this little, I'm calling it a well area. It's like a little basin, I guess. So we're proposing to install 120 panels on the eastern side of this well. So that's in the picture on the lower left. It's on the left-hand side of that wall. There'll be a control area where we monitor the site. There's no tiles installed there, but we're monitoring the site for just ambient growth. And that's going to be on the other side of that well. Then we have 2 other control areas, one on the north-facing side of the seawall and one on the east-facing side of the seawall. Again, everything's installed in the intertidal zone. Resource areas here, coastal bank throughout on these seawalls, and then land under the ocean. Next slide. And then this is looking straight on at this. So we've got, those 120 panels right here. Construction will be on the coastal bank. Access will be on the coastal bank. And storage, temporary storage will be landward of the seawall in the upland. Next slide. This slide here shows that we're going to install 5 different types of tiles. These are concrete tiles molded using a 3D printer. We've got a smooth control surface tile that's installed just for baseline monitoring. We've got a small and a large rock pool tiles. And so those are mainly for invertebrates and algae that need some sort of constant moisture in order to survive. That 4th one over is a swim through tile. That's for small fish. When they're foraging and swimming around, they can find places to hide. One thing you'll see in the next slide is that all these tiles are offset or set off the face of the seawall. So on that swim through tile, the fish can sort of go through those holes and kind of hide in behind the tile. And then the crevice tile is that last one on the right. So that's protection for sessile species from larger predators as they get into those crevices. Next slide, please. That is an extra slide. My mistake. We can just skip that when you've already seen it. Okay, installation process. So in the cross section on the right, that's that hatched area on the left of AA transect is the seawall. And you can see that there's some screws that affix the tiles to the seawall. So essentially we're going to be drilling holes in the seawall with a hand drill. There'll be 3 holes. The picture on the right shows 4, but that middle hole is not going to be used. There's just 3 areas, and we're going to drill holes. We're going to fill those holes with epoxy and put the rods in. When that's set, then the panels will be attached to the rods using nuts and washers. As I said, we're just going to use a hammer drill or a core drill. It's all operated by hand, all accessed by foot, no heavy machinery. We estimate it's going to take about 4 to 6 weeks for installation, sometime this spring. As I said before, all material storage and staging is in the upland behind the seawalls. Installation will be overseen by a professional engineer. And when we remove the tiles in the spring of 27, they're easily removed by just taking the panels off and flush cutting those rods with the seawalls. So they're easily removed with no damage to the seawalls. Next slide, please. Monitoring program, this is an important part of it. So it is going to be monitored by the Burns Lab, operated from UMass Boston. And they will be out every 3 months to monitor the growth on these walls, both sessile growth and mobile growth. They're going to be monitoring them within these quadrats that's shown in that picture on the lower left with the PVC squares. So they'll be counting types of species, numbers of species. They'll be looking at percent cover and abundance within each panel. And they'll do statistical analyses on the data to produce graphics like you see in this slide here. As I said, we're going to be monitoring them every 3 months. We're also going to monitor the sites before we install, and then once they get installed every 3 months throughout summer, fall, and late spring. Those reports will be made available to the public on the Stone Living Lab website, and then also provided to the regulatory agencies. Next slide. Here's a schedule.
Leslie, could I share one thing quickly?
Yeah, please. Yes, please.
I also want to make sure to share that we look forward to providing those directly to the Conservation Commission as well, those reports on
a absolutely, yes. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Joe. This is just a quick schedule. So we're doing project scoping, design, and permitting right now. We hope to be ready to install spring of 2024. We'll monitor them for the next 3 years. So the spring of 24 through 27. With reporting every 3 months to the agencies, the Conservation Commission, and then removal in the spring of 2027. And then next slide. Okay, so we provided documentation in the RDA that the project does comply with performance standards for work in coastal bank, coastal beach, and land subject to coastal storm flowage. And we are requesting that the Conservation Commission issue a -2 determination. And just to maybe address Commissioner Parker's comments early on about filing a notice of intent, we feel like the project can be issued a -2 determination of applicability because we're not removing, filling, dredging, or altering the resource areas. So that coastal bank that we're working on, is still going to be a coastal bank and is still going to provide all the, serve all the interests, you know, that coastal banks are designed to or intended to in the wetlands regulations. Still going to be a vertical buffer to stormwaters, still going to provide flood control. We're not altering that at all. It's temporary and then will be removed within 3 years. So that's why we feel like it falls under, you know, an RDA and can be issued a -2. And that's the end of the discussion, but happy to answer questions.
Okay, great. Thank you. Joe, thank you for anticipating my question about the monitoring reports. As far as the installers, are they going to be, I think you said, Leslie, they're going to be volunteers overseen by professionals. Is that how it's going to work?
Correct. I think also members from the Burns Lab will also be involved with installation as well. But it
Okay.
will be overseen by a professional engineer.
Okay. Same thing when they go in to monitor.
Yes, Burns Lab is in charge of that, and there will be some volunteers, like an educational component, but it will be overseen by, you know, the Burns Lab.
Okay. Okay.
I'm sorry. Could I make one adjustment on that? So for the monitoring program, I wanted to make sure I heard your question right. For the monitoring program, it will be volunteers and students overseen by a lead researcher. But on the installation, this will not be volunteers. This is a subcontractor overseen by a professional engineer that's doing the installation work.
Okay. And the same with the removal.
Correct.
Correct.
Okay. Great, thank you. Okay, I am still stuck on the word alter in the definition for the when we can issue a -2 determination. So Commissioner Herbst, I'm going to actually put you on the spot. I'd like to hear your thoughts on that. Give me a reality check.
I think I would see it as something that could be permitted as an RDA. I mean, I guess anything could be considered to alter, but I think if you look at what they're doing, I don't think it alters in the sense of the act and how we think about that. Whether it's
okay,
I don't think we gain anything from an NOI that we don't have here.
Yep. Okay, thank you. I agree. I don't think we gain anything from the NOI. I'm just concerned about alteration, but thank you. Elena, what do you have on this, if anything?
Thank you. Yeah, a lot of the same notes that that you mentioned at the beginning of the hearing. I did also just want to flag that while we do attach some sort of standard conditions to negative determinations of applicability, it is much harder to include detailed conditions on that. And so I think that was my perspective, is that in the case where the commission would issue an order of conditions for a project like this, it would be easier for there to be conditions that we could then refer back to during the installation, any sort of concerns that we have with debris removal, things like that, that would have a bit more teeth than something that would go along with a negative determination of applicability.
Great, thank you. Do you have something worked up for this?
I haven't worked anything up for this yet, so that would be another thing to consider before closing the hearing.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Sullivan, what do you have?
So these things are about 2 foot in diameter, each one of these pads?
That's correct. I have a scale model of one right here, actually. I'm not sure if the screen can see it, but yes, they are 2 feet by 2 feet, approximately.
Right. And does the public have access along at low tide? Can the public cruise alongside these things?
They can, yeah. I mean, they can access it. I don't know how often. I don't know how often the public goes there now, but they can certainly access it at low tide.
Yeah, because to me it looks like, you know, if I were a rock climber or I had kids at low tide, I'd send them down there and say, hey, look at this great stuff. Because we're always putting innovative things at the Children's Museum and all. And I'm wondering if you need signage or something to tell people this is this experiment and science, and stay the hell off my little pads, because it looks just like a rock climbing wall. I had some grandkids that I was terrorizing a couple of weeks ago, and they look just like this. You can reach your hands in and climb up. So that's my only comment on it. I'd just be nervous about, you know, attractive nuisance type things.
It's a great question, Commissioner Sullivan, and we should have actually included this in the presentation. It's funny you mentioned the Children's Museum. They are our education and engagement partner on this project. And we do have funding for doing education and engagement work with them around these projects, and funding to create signage at each of the project sites to share exactly what you just said, what the project is doing, what the nature of it is, and please do not climb on it.
Yeah, okay, that was my only comment. All set.
Thank you. Great, thank you. Commissioner Long?
I'm sorry, I thought I was still recused from the last hearing, but because of my team's involvement with this project, this is another one I have to recuse myself on.
Okay, I apologize. Consider yourself recused.
Thank you.
Okay. Commissioner Wilson?
Yeah, no comment other than this is a fantastic kind of workaround in terms of, you know, if you wanted to replace a whole bunch of seawalls in Boston and test out lots of different substrates, this is a good way to do it. Just one question in terms of how, like, part of the benefit of these is while the tide is up and fish can swim in and out, or other things, you know, mobile organisms can come to rest, how do you monitor that sort of when it's...
That is a good question. I'm not sure I know the answer to. That's a really good question. So you're saying how are we monitoring the fisheries that are sort of benefiting from this?
We have a couple of innovative ways that the Burns Lab has developed. It's temporary on-site underwater cameras that are essentially connected by a fishing rod and lowered from the harbor walk into the water is one way. And you have some other small temporary deployed ways to do so as well, including visual observation from researchers who will be there.
All right, not upside down undergrads or whatever, but
no.
No, this is cool, and yeah, this is how I learned biology, is going out there with a quadrat and rock pools. So appreciate you guys putting this in the city. So thanks.
Thank you. Commissioner Wilson, do you mind providing some commentary on the issue as to whether this rises to the level of an NOI or a RDA?
Oh, sure. Yeah, no, I think this is an RDA. I think this is like if we had somebody who came in who said that their concrete surface was spalling and they needed to do a resurface along the 4-point channel or something like that, that we would be like, that is a de minimis, you know, sort of alteration to the resource area.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Conan?
Thanks, Chair Parker. Yeah, a cool project. I agree with Commissioner Sullivan there. I think some signage would be helpful, even like outside, even before people could see this installation, where people do go to areas like Condo Street. If they could see signage outside about this installation, then they could take a look at it from wherever they are. That might be nice to see. And in terms of the growth that's expected on these structures, the same growth is not expected on the current wall, correct?
They have done some research or monitoring of what's there now, and it's mainly algae, and they are expecting that they're going to get some other sorts of, you know, crustaceans and other types of growth, so different growth on these panels, and that's proven from research in other areas.
And will that then flow out into the water during high tide?
Well, if they're attached to the tiles, no. They do have the potential of, you know, if more organisms have the potential to improve water quality ever so slightly, you know, as they're filtering that water and whatnot. But I don't believe that will be flowing out into the water.
The water comes in with some force, right, every day, and then goes out again.
Yeah.
But your expectation that there will be no impact, and whatever there is will be positive.
Correct.
Is this based on study or just
based on research at other sites that they've done? So they've installed these tiles at other places, the manufacturer, and that's what they've found there.
I see. And at the end of the research, what are you hoping to find?
We're hoping to be able to demonstrate that, I think just what Commissioner Wilson said, that if there are, we're hoping to develop data that demonstrates that if you've got an existing seawall with sort of a monoculture or not much biodiversity there, that, you know, there are other surfaces that could be used to retrofit that seawall so that we can improve biodiversity within, you know, Boston Harbor or areas where we have these hard coastal engineering structures.
Just by virtue of the structure.
That's right. If I could add to that real quickly too, and I'll cite, you know, Jarrett Burns, our lead researcher from the Burns Lab, you know, with sea level rise, you're essentially losing portions of the intertidal zone as well. And yes, this helps extend that intertidal zone and create more habitable circumstances for marine life.
So it's primarily a benefit for increasing biodiversity on the seawalls, or is it more than that, like purification of water or anything like that?
I think it's mainly the former. I think the purification of water is just sort of an ancillary benefit, and it's probably a very small benefit, but it's one that the literature on these tiles does mention.
I see. And you'll be measuring the metric that relates to the former.
Yes.
Okay, great. I'm looking forward to it. Thank you.
Commissioner Conan, any commentary on the RDA versus NOI issue?
I can't tell what the impact will be. I have to go by more experienced folks here, but it looks like it will be in the water and it will receive water. Well, it'll see water coming in, it'll see water going out. So that is some force, and what leaches from the installations that goes into the harbor, and that's what my question was about. It appears the impact will be minimal or positive, but I can't assess that. And if there is a way to check that, that would be good to see what the impact is. Is there a way to measure?
Are you asking if we could... Go ahead, Joe.
Oh, I was just going to say, I think if it would be helpful, we could send along some of the existing literature from Macquarie University and the Sydney Institute of Marine Sciences, who are partnering with on this, to show how that has been at their other 14 installation sites.
Showing that there is nothing leaching from these structures into the water. And
correct.
In its naked form as well as in its modified form during the course of the 3 years.
So that is part of what we're researching, that they have seen those type of results at other locations, but they have not done an installation in North America. This is the first one, and so that's exactly what we're looking to research, is what those benefits are of the accumulation and water quality.
Right, I get that we're looking for the benefits. I think the RDA versus NOI question is about negative impact on the water. And are you saying that you'd be researching that also, or are you saying that you're sure that there won't be negative impact?
Leslie, do you want to address that? And I'm happy to supplement.
Yeah, I mean, I do not know if they're going to be measuring water quality. That's one thing I don't know. That's something we can ask the Burns Lab and see if they're going to be measuring water quality. I don't know what there would be at this site that would potentially impact water quality. They're concrete tiles, you know, that are attached to existing, you know, granite block seawalls for the most part. So I don't know what would leach out of these concrete tiles that would cause any sort of negative impacts to water quality.
And I can speak to the fact that Leslie, yeah, the Burns Lab will be looking at water quality as part of the monitoring program.
Thank you.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, I think that, you know, if we keep an eye on it and include that measurement, and if we can get those reports also, then that'd be good.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. Commissioner Richmond.
Yeah, thank you very much. I missed the meeting at which a similar project was discussed. Could somebody just tell me why it was decided that that project needed an NOI?
Sure. Elena, I don't know if you want to handle that.
Yeah, Yeah, sure. So the so Emerald 22 was actually a project last year where I was on staff by the time the permit was being issued, but I wasn't there for the background. So the one I'm more familiar with is the Eastie Farm project. And the idea around that being an NOI is that even a positive impact on a resource area is still an impact. And that at that point, when we were discussing which direction they should take with their permitting, we had recommended an NOI so that the right conditions could be in place to make sure that there's clear guidance on installation, again, what to do, you know, if something goes wrong with the project. There's just more that the commission was able to kind of speak to on how the project would be carried out. And there are sort of more parameters that would be able to be placed on the project as opposed to a negative RDA, or excuse me, a negative DOA as a result of an RDA filing. Which is why we sort of ended up taking that avenue.
Okay, I mean, I think, you know, you're about to ask me, Chair Parker, the same question I presume you've asked others. And I think, you know, based on what I've heard tonight, I would agree with what Commissioner Herbst said at the beginning, that it seems like it's you know, a very minimal impact, and therefore having the applicant go through an NOI is not going to result in our imposing any conditions that they probably wouldn't already agree to, you know, in the context of a negative determination. So, you know, again, I always defer to people more knowledgeable on some of this stuff, but it does seem to me that if there are concerns or things that we want, that we could probably ask the applicant to do it, and it sounds like they're going to agree to do them, and that bringing them back for an NOI is not going to result in anything that is more stringent or rigorous than what we're getting.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Herbst, back to you.
I don't know if I've forgotten this, but the Eastie Farm project that we just saw was not the same thing. So are we talking about something else?
Yeah, so the Eastie Farm, the only thing I was referring to is installation of tiles in a resource area. They're vegetated. So that's why I was drawing the analogy.
But you're talking about the one we just permitted?
Yes. Yep.
Okay, I do see that as quite a bit different. I mean, maybe we should have considered that for an RDA, but it doesn't change my opinion about this one. And I do see that project is different. So that's it for me. I don't have any questions.
Okay. Can I ask you why you see it differently?
It was putting a lot of vegetation in the water.
Yeah.
And it was, I don't know, staking stuff to the bottom. I just thought it was a more significant project than essentially affixing cement to a stone wall.
Yeah.
A lot more vegetation.
Yeah, I think I agree with you. It was more invasive, I thought, for sure. But you know, similar to the layman's eye, whatever that term is. Okay. Okay. Elena, anybody from the public?
I see 2 raised hands. I believe that Gail Miller was the first person to raise their hand.
Okay. Ms. Miller?
Oh, hi. Was I not muted? Oh, I wasn't.
You're good now.
Okay. I was just curious. It sounds like an interesting project, particularly as an East Boston resident. I'm always excited that something's happening there. But I was just curious, were you looking for more space to apply tiles by any chance in that area?
We have what we need for right now for this project right here. We have everything that we need for this project.
Okay, because the last hearing, I think it was the last hearing, Boston Concom is going to oversee a pier or 3 acres of space out there that might have a seawall that I'll offer up as available space. But yeah, it's exciting. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Mr. Walke?
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Great project. I would say that the Commissioner Sullivan's concerns about the attractive nuisance, that was the first thing I thought of too. It looked like a climbing wall. Lots of places to get fingers into and stuff. I think the importance, and given the fact that it is accessing it, you sort of scramble down the riprap and go through a part of the, I think some of it has sort of eroded back a little bit, but the restored salt marsh is sort of at the base of the riprap. So if you go to the corner up against the wall, you're not stepping in it. But not so concerned about the actual engineers going down, installing it, the researchers going down, checking it out, but concerned more about people seeing it and saying, what is that? And going down and staggering around through it to figure out what it is. So the importance of the signage and the damage wouldn't necessarily be to the mud flat or the wall. It would probably be more on the actual salt marsh grasses that are the little that's growing in there. So the more that there can be interpretive signage that sort of explains what it is and that there's nothing cool down there. It's just try to prevent people from staggering down there to prevent any sort of erosion. I mean, that the upland hill on that site had a fence around it for a couple of seasons just because there were kids running up and down one side instead of going around the spiral, and little by little it was eroding away a track on the hill, and that hill is sort of capping a lot of contaminants that we don't want to leach out. So people will walk around. So if you introduce something that's attractive to them, they might walk down to it. They occasionally do to go fishing, but for the most part, I think interpretive signage should handle it. Just making sure that it's bilingual in English and Spanish, I think will be important. You probably already have that. And the last thing would be, as a board member of the Eagle Hill Civic Association, come on down, come on, give a presentation, let people know about it. I'm sure, and if it's like Museum of Science or whoever you have doing some of the outreach, we'd love to hear about it. I think people always like to hear in the community what's going on and being sort of in the loop of what's happening.
We really appreciate those comments, John. Thank you. Great points, especially given your very, very intimate knowledge about the neighborhood and that particular site. We will definitely be having interpretive signage and bilingual. I can commit to that here at both sites. And both of these sites, part of the selection process was making sure that they were visible from the Harbor Walk, so people could be at the signage observing them and not hopefully that will help deter them from wanting to go down closer. The fact that you can see them pretty clearly from the Harbor Walk itself, but yeah, the signage is for the health of the intertidal zone and also public safety is going to be really important. So we will be doing that.
Fantastic, thank you. Okay, so with that, Ellen, I don't see any other raised hands. Okay, let's get to a vote. You said that Elena, you said that you hadn't worked on any conditions. We usually approve these -2s with standard erosion controls. Go ahead.
I was thinking, so given the fact that this is slightly different from our typical project, maybe we have some standard conditions for in-water or waterside work that would have some language included on precautions for any debris that ends up in the water, things like that. Those might be appropriate here.
Yep, okay.
And then also perhaps a condition just specifying that they would need to be removed at the end of the 3-year period before, before 3 years passes after the determination is issued.
Okay. Fantastic. Okay, so with that, I would entertain a motion to issue a -2 determination with standard erosion controls in the conditions that Elena just laid out.
What about the water quality measurement that we discussed earlier?
Yeah, we can put that in there. We're going to get the monitoring reports. We're going to get the water quality reports.
Great.
Yeah, they committed to that. Okay.
Sorry.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Commissioner Sullivan?
Aye.
Commissioner Wilson?
Aye.
Commissioner Conan,
Aye.
Commissioner Richmond,
Aye.
Commissioner Herbst,
Aye.
and I vote aye, so that carries 6-0. Okay, good luck. Looking forward to it.
Thank you
We
for your
really
time.
appreciate it. Thank you, everyone.
Good night. Next item on the agenda is a request for a determination of applicability from HNTB on behalf of the Massachusetts Bay Transportation Authority, also known as the MBTA, for the proposed exploratory borings located within the MBTA right-of-way in Mattapan. Who's here on behalf of the applicant?
Hi, I'm Jeremy Fontaine with the MBTA, and I'm also here with Mike Turgeon of HNTB.
Great. Floor is all yours.
So I'm just going to do a brief introduction and pass it on to Mike. We have exploratory borings in this area to help us with our future design to improve, renovate the future we have for our Mattapan transportation program. And I will pass it on to Mike from HNTB.
Okay, could you go to the first slide, please? So this was a request for determination of applicability for the geotechnical borings. Back in January, we had sent a notice that we were going to be doing geotechnical borings in non-jurisdictional areas and in areas that are in the buffer zone or riverfront area, but are exempt as minor projects. We also had 2 borings that are in land subject to coastal storm flowage, within the polygon of land subject to coastal storm flowage and below the 100-year base flood elevation. So those are the 2 borings that we're here to discuss. Next slide, please. So the original count that we were anticipating was 46. 10 have been removed from the program, and the 36 remaining, of the 36 remaining, 22 clear outside of Wetlands Protection Act jurisdiction. 12 are exempt as buffer zone or riverfront area boring, and then 2 require the permit. And this list was sent to Alina recently. Next slide, please. So this kind of shows the locations of all of the borings. The map on the left shows the Mattapan station, and you can see the Neponset River, and the borings are uphill from the Neponset. Some of them are in the buffer zone. None of these are in land subject to coastal storm flowage. The same is true for the one near the bridge. In that bridge, the site then goes into Milton. In the next slide, this is the bridge. No, actually, sorry, go back to the previous slide. There's 2 maps. I'm referencing that second map, which is crossing the bridge. This is the bridge over the tidal section that brings the line back into Boston. And the one right very close to the bridge is in the buffer zone to the river. And the rest of them are all outside of jurisdiction. And then next slide. This slide, there's borings on here that are outside of jurisdiction or within the polygon for isolated land subject to flooding, but above the base flood elevation of 10, and it's shown in the table that we submitted. The CP6 and SB16 are the 2 that are in our adjacent to the land subject to coastal storm flowage polygon and below the 100-year base flood elevation. The base flood elevation here is at 10. the CP6 is at 9.78, 76, and
Nothing I have to
SB16.
pay attention to. Right now.
Okay, go ahead,
And,
Mike. Sorry, I don't know who that was.
Okay, SB16 is at 9.68. So those two, and you can see the salt marsh designated by the orange line and the buffer zone by the yellow line, and then across the trail, there's a track. The tracks are in here, and then the Neponset Trail, and on the other side of the trail, there's a stream and wetland, and the work is in the buffer zone to them, but on the far side of the Neponset Trail. CP6 is located within the between the tracks, and SB16 is in an area close to the bridge where the tracks go over the Neponset Trail. The rest on this left-hand photo are in the buffer zone, but above the base flood elevation. And then on the remaining slides, all of the mooring locations are outside of jurisdictional area. So if you go to the next slide, that's our table for like all the borings that are kind of near the polygon. Lists the base flood elevation, and the two that are beneath it are in pink. And this is just a blow up of the area that we just talked about next to it. So CP6 again is between the tracks. SB16 is along the trail on the west side of the trail, just below just next to the bridge abutment. And that is our presentation. The borings are required to establish depth to bedrock and in the soil conditions in the area. For either the SB16 is for a structural boring associated with the bridge, and CP6 is associated with making sure they can get a catenary pole in. So that's the extent of the project. And let me know if you have any questions.
Great, thank you, Mike. I don't have any questions on this. Elena?
I just want to note that the letter that was mentioned in the presentation is in the folder for the commission's review.
Thank you. Commissioner Sullivan?
No questions.
Commissioner Long?
No questions, thank you.
Commissioner Wilson?
None here either, thanks.
Commissioner Conan?
No questions, thank you.
Commissioner Richmond?
I don't have any either, thank you.
Commissioner Herbst?
Nothing from me.
Okay. Elena, any hands raised?
I see no hands, and we don't have anything in our inbox either.
Okay, so I'd entertain a motion to issue a negative determination of applicability with standard erosion controls.
So moved.
You have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Commissioner Sullivan?
Aye.
Commissioner Long?
Aye.
Commissioner Wilson?
Aye.
Commissioner Conan?
Aye.
Commissioner Richmond?
Aye.
Commissioner Herbst?
Aye.
And I vote aye. So that carries 7-0. Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Next item on the agenda. Good night. Next item on the agenda is a request for a determination of applicability from Atlas Technical Consultants, LLC, on behalf of the Massachusetts State Police for the proposed replacement of a heating oil utility supply line through soil excavation located at 200 Beverly Street in the west end of Boston. Who's here on behalf of the applicant?
Yes, good evening, board members and commission staff. My name is Adam Giraldi, Senior Project Manager for Atlas Technical, and I have Charles Klingler with me, LSP, for this project.
Good evening.
Good evening. The floor is yours.
All right, great. So in the opening slide here, we see a basic overview of the area. We've got the Charles River locks to the north. We've got the Zakim Bridge to the west, and surrounded by it is obviously the Charles River. The core of the project where they'll be conducted is you can see right in the center of that image where there's a parking lot area just to the west of that white roof building. The white roof building is the Mass State Police Marine Building. On the western part of that parking lot, there is 3 underground storage tanks. One of them is the heating oil for the building. Late in December, we had a failure of the heating oil line that supplied the building from that UST. And so through tightness testing, we identified that the underground storage tank itself was tight, but that the lines had failed. And it was not determined if it was both lines or just a single line, but it does not matter to us because they are both within the same trench and conduit that would need to be replaced. So they would both be replaced at the same time. If you could go to the next slide, please. Now, this particular slide is a zoom in of that location, identifying the resource around it, you know, the banks of the Charles River, the location of the locks and the building, and then the excavation area and our erosion control measures that we will be installing around our work zone. We can go to the next slide. Now, this is our site plan. This shows a lot of the detailed features of different resource areas that are in the area, and as well as the extent of our work scope. You can see you've got the waterfront boundary, or actually should they say the actual river edge, in the blue, like little blue triangles, and then in from that 25 feet, you've got the 25-foot buffer zone, or I'm sorry, what riverfront area. And then another 25 feet in from that, you have the Commission's 25-foot waterfront area. The entire area is within the 100-foot buffer zone that the Commission has as part of their ordinance. And if you look in the center, the highlighted yellow, that is the location of the proposed trench to be excavated. You can see that the erosion control barriers that are proposed come outside of that, even not only the 25-foot riverfront, but also the 25-foot waterfront area. There is some exemption for that. If you look at the eastern part of that adjacent to the building, there is some of the 25-foot waterfront area that this falls within, but to be honest, it's through a building and also some additional features such as curbing and other site structures. We can go to the next slide. So here's a visual representation of the actual land that we're looking to do the work under. It's going to be in that area highlighted in yellow. We're basically going to saw cut a trench, remove the asphalt, take the asphalt off site, excavate down 2 to 3 feet to the depth of that utility, replace the utility, and then backfill and repave. You can go to the next slide. And this is looking in the other direction. You can see the underground storage tank there, straight ahead in the center of the photo. Again, the yellow highlighted area is the proposed saw cut and excavation area. And in the background, you can see obviously lots of state police equipment. And then the Zakim Bridge is actually in the far background of that. That's the end of what we have proposed here. Open it up to questions from the commission members.
Okay, fantastic. Since I missed the last boat to Charlestown, I'll be walking through there tonight on my way home. So I'll make sure I do a site visit here. Hopefully you're not closing the locks and I have to walk around. But quick question for Charles. What was the impact of the breach here? Did any where did the
Well, I can answer that question.
Where was the lost product? Where did that go? Excuse me.
The lines, there's a return and a feed and return line, and both those lines are contained in a 3 or 4 inch conduit. They failed the tightness test. We have not done any type of investigation to find out what type of impact that may have had. There may be no impact to soil whatsoever. It may have been contained within the conduit. We don't know that yet until we open up the earth and take a look.
Okay, so that's why you're here. What do you expect if you did find something, just in rough scope of how much? I don't know if it would be soil that needs to be removed here. Is there soil?
Well, what our thought process is here is that the trench going to be, like Adam said, probably 3 feet deep, maybe 2 to 3 feet wide. If we come across an area of contaminated soil, we're going to have to excavate it. I don't know how much may have been released. They found this. They discovered the situation. They jumped on it promptly. We had they removed the liquid from the tank system. We had the tank tested within days. The tank system tested, and so I wouldn't expect there to be too much. But with all these things, you don't know until you open up the ground. Like I know you'd said something earlier on the first presentation. You really don't know until you get into the ground. That's why we'd like to get in there and take a look.
Okay, so was there a 120-day reporting requirement here, or you just don't know that yet?
No, we have an RTN for this. We reported the threat of release to the state, and we have an RTN, so it's under the jurisdiction of the MCP.
Okay, so what I'm getting at here is, number one, we would like to see the results of the report, because I assume you're going to have to file a report with DEP here. And number two, if there is work that needs to be done, like a IRA or something like that, clearly we want to see you back here for approval for that, because that'll be beyond the scope of what you're proposing today. So with that, I would turn it over to Elena, see if she has anything.
I don't have anything to add on this. Thanks.
Thank you. Commissioner Sullivan?
I have nothing.
Okay. Commissioner Long?
Nothing for me. Thank you.
Okay. Commissioner Wilson?
I don't either. I'm sorry. I don't either. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Conan?
Is this just to do the investigation to figure out the impact?
No, this is to replace the fuel lines. I'll let Adam speak to that. He knows more about than I do.
Yeah, so the scope of this work is to replace the lines. During replacement of those lines, we would identify any soil that needs to be excavated, then we would go ahead and do that excavation to within reason. Obviously, we can't go too deep, considering that this is situated on the dam, and we're aware that anything beyond 6 feet, the Army Corps would want to review what we would do. But at minimal, we would expect at most a minimal excavation of soils. If we identified that it has gone beyond that, then we would install some soil borings on that portion around the lines.
So this request then is for the request for determination of potentially excavation as well as the installation of the soil borings if needed.
Correct. Well, it is, yes. The RDA is for the excavation that we know needs to take place related to removal of the lines. The specific depth is unknown. And then as well, if encountered, we would, remove any contaminated soil around the lines. If it goes beyond that, then we would end up probably requesting an emergency order to complete the work while we have it open.
Meaning you'll contact staff again to say that you have to do this right away.
Correct. And at that point, we would just say, hey, now we know. At that point, it would be more clear where we have contamination, at what part of the of that trench, because it's like a 75 foot trench. So there's too many unknowns right now. But if there were to be something that would be outside of the standard scope, that would be reasonable for this work, then we would contact the commission and request a emergency order to get it completed while we have the trench open.
I'm so glad the breach was detected. Do you know how that detection works? Is there some sort of alert that goes off just automatically because it senses liquid where it shouldn't be or something?
So there are many systems. There's a VitaRoot system that monitors lots of different features of the underground storage tank system. In this particular case, the heating system was faltering because it was not keeping up the pressure that it needed, and so they investigated at that point and found that the line had failed.
So the symptom was that it wasn't actually working, at least not working well.
Correct.
Okay, so there wasn't a detection of leak, but more like driven by the symptom of why is this not working well, and then realizing that it was leaking.
Correct. It was just they identified that it was not working well, and so through the investigation of the UST system, they identified that the lines that were not keeping the pressure that it needed, and so they deactivated the system, removed the fluid from the tank and the lines, and went to it. They have a temporary tank there right now, but they want to obviously get rid of the temporary tank and get their regular tank back in service.
Okay, and there are 2 tanks, right? You said there are
3 tanks. There are 3 tanks. One is heating oil, one is gasoline, and one is diesel.
I see.
The subject of this is just the heating oil.
Correct.
Forget about the fuel consumption tanks. This is just for the heating oil tank, and the primary reason why we're requesting the RDA is to replace the heating oil lines. We don't know yet if a release has occurred to the soil or to the groundwater. We'll find that out when we open it up. But the primary reason for the RDA at this time, request of the RDA, is to replace the lines. And at that time, we'll find out if there is a problem, and then we'll know.
Sounds good. Thank you. That's all, Chair Parker.
You're welcome.
Commissioner Richmond.
Yeah, I'm confused, and I wasn't before. What is it that you might find that would cause you to come back to the commission?
If we were to find that when we open up the ground and we remove the underground lines, the supply lines, if contamination from those lines had made it outside of the conduit that those lines sit in, then we would have contamination to soil. And so then we would do some investigating to see like how deep that goes. But if it goes beyond a reasonable scope of depth for what we're anticipating and what we proposed here, then we would contact the commission to get approval for additional excavation. It really would not change the scope because it would still be within the same general area. If it were to go beyond the general area of that trench that we were talking about, then we would probably stop the excavation and backfill it and complete it as proposed, and then do additional soil borings in the area to identify the extent of contamination.
And what is the conduit made of, and how big is it?
My understanding is PVC 4-inch.
Okay, and that you think is sufficient to contain whatever spillage occurred?
It could be.
It could be. Okay, I get you. So if it wasn't or it isn't, is when you would be coming back to the commission?
If it were if we identify, the first thing would be to do a little bit of exploratory digging to say, is this just a localized condition just below the lines, or is this looking like it is, like, is there gross contamination, heavily saturated soils? Does it expand beyond what we would reasonably be able to excavate from within our trench and within our work zone?
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. End of my question.
Thank you. Commissioner Herbst?
No questions. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Okay, and Adam, you said something earlier. I just want to be clear that if you find something beyond the scope of this, the scope of the work, that we issue a negative determination of applicability for this evening. If we do that, that it would probably require an NOI, but let's see what happens. We'll take it one step at a time here. And unfortunately, I do think we'll probably be seeing you back here, but yeah, just take it one step at a time. Well, Elena, anything, anybody have their hand raised?
I don't see any hands.
Great, thank you. So that yes,
Mark,
please.
I had a quick question. If we do go for a negative determination, can we, on the standard conditions, require that within a year somebody tells us how these tanks are doing? Because I'm concerned. I know we're dealing with just this line, but if we have all this buried infrastructure that may or may not be, for whatever reason, ready to start leaking, this is a small line that leaked. I'm always concerned about a slowly leaking tank, underground, and what damage that could do. Could we put that on a condition for, if you get an RDA to get out there and fix this, you got to come back to us within a year and tell us how the tanks are doing and how all your other infrastructure that's buried is doing?
Yeah, no, that's fair actually, given the fact that the leak, it wasn't picked up by a leak detection system, only a fairly, well, I guess, reduced efficacy of the system indoors. So with that, Adam, I think we're going to add a condition that we get within a year, we'll get a report on the condition of the other USTs, or all 3 USTs. I'm sure that somewhere, whether it's to the fire department or to DEP, or maybe a spill prevention plan that's in place at the property, there should be a report, maybe an annual report. If not, we'd like to see one. So we'll be adding.
If I may answer something to that effect.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure about the heating oil UST that is the subject of this, but I do know that the gasoline and diesel USTs are subject to third-party inspections, so they would be done regularly anyways. And I believe that includes tightness testing on a periodic basis. And I'm not sure if that's every 2 or every 3 years, but something along those lines. And we can certainly look into that and maybe provide the most recent info for you.
Yeah, I'd be surprised if you don't have something on file. And I agree with you, not sure about the heating oil tank, but the condition would be something like if any existing reports, and then the next report after that, that will be generated for the tanks, so that we're assured that they're in good shape.
Yeah, and if I could just ask a question about that, if they're on a regular monitoring schedule and it is not, let's say that they did it last year and it's not due again for another 1 to 2 years, would you require that we do it out of the required DEP schedule, or are you sufficient with that we're in compliance with regular monitoring?
No, I think we're good with whatever regulatory timetable that you're on. I believe it's every other year, but let's see what you have. Commissioner Sullivan, does that make sense to you?
Oh yeah, no, I'm fine. I just want to make sure that we pay attention to stuff right along the waterfront. That's all.
Yep. Fantastic. Okay, so with that, I would entertain a motion.
Excuse me, I have a question though. Do we have do we have an idea of how long the shelf life, if that's the right phrase, of that PVC container pipe is?
Years and years. I don't know exactly, but PVC, it's Schedule 40, it's Schedule 80 PVC pipe. It'll last for a long time unless there's some kind of breach to it.
What's a long time?
40, 80 years. I mean, really.
40, 80, 90 years. I mean,
the breach is more subsidence. I think that would be what we'd be concerned with there.
Okay, but so that just so that I understand what you're saying, Chair Parker, is that there are other regulations that are going to control how often this thing needs to be looked at, because in the normal course of events, it's going to have a useful life of 70 or 80 years. Did I understand that correctly?
Yes, but the tanks don't have that long of a lifetime. So
okay, so the tanks
and this is under the DEP. They have a regulatory program. They've had the UST program. They've had it for years, and they the two tanks, the gasoline and the diesel, do have tank monitors. I'm not sure about the heating oil because that's for consumptive use, and that may be exempt from the automated monitoring systems. But
Yeah, Charles, what's the capacity of the heating oil UST? Is it over
I believe it's
5,000 gallons?
Yeah, I believe it's 6,000 gallons, maybe.
I actually think that's regulated, but you'll get that information to us.
Okay.
If you look on back on the slideshow on slide 3, it has actually depicted what sizes they are.
Yeah, it's a
Yeah.
4,000 gallon for the heating oil.
You might be under. But anyways, you'll get that information to us.
Yeah, we'll get that for you.
Okay. Great. So I think I don't know if anybody made the motion, so I'll start over. Entertain a motion to issue a negative determination of applicability. Standard erosion control conditions also condition that we receive the tank integrity reports that they have, what they have. And I think that was it, right? There's nothing else. Okay, so that's the motion.
Sorry, Chair Parker, to clarify, the existing reports and then also the next one that.
No, as long as they have the existing reports, then we'll be assured that they're on the regulatory timetable. So we won't need the next one.
So just the existing ones. Thank you.
Yep.
So moved.
You have a second?
Second.
Okay, Commissioner Sullivan.
Aye.
Commissioner Long.
Aye.
Commissioner Wilson.
Aye.
Commissioner Conan.
Aye.
Commissioner Richmond.
Aye.
Commissioner Herbst.
Aye.
And I vote aye. That carries 7-0. Okay, thank you. Next item on the agenda. Request for Thank you. Request for an extension for DEP file number 006 1700 from Susan Bernstein on behalf of the Union Wharf Condominium Trust for the ongoing maintenance and stabilization operations of the seawall located at 343 Commercial Street, north end of Boston. Resource areas, coastal bank and land subject to coastal storm flowage. Eleanor, are you going to speak to this or do we have a presentation?
Let me see.
I'm here.
Yes, there we go.
Oh, hi, Susan. How are you?
I'm good. How are you, Mr. Chair?
Good.
Let me just briefly, if you're ready for me.
We're ready. Floor is all yours.
All right, great. For the record, I'm Susan Bernstein, attorney for Union Wharf Condominium Trust. The property is located at 343 Commercial Street, facing Boston Harbor in the north end. We have submitted a request for an extension for 1 year to finish the ongoing maintenance on our seawall and our docking system. This involves ongoing maintenance for our exterior, and we would very much appreciate if we could have a little bit more time. The work represents, as I said, a continuation of ongoing activities. The two resource areas are the coastal bank and land subject to coastal storm flowage. The seawall protects both those resource areas.
Okay, great. Thank you. Is this the first extension that you've asked for this?
I believe so, yes.
Okay.
On order of conditions, yes.
Okay. So we have the option to go up to 3 years, I believe. Is 1 year enough? I mean, I'd love to see the work done expeditiously, but
I mean, if the commission would allow us 3 years, that would be great.
Okay. Okay. Elena, what do you have on this?
Nothing to add there. We're good on timeline because of the COVID tolling for the permit. So logistically, everything looks good.
Okay. And when you say we're good on timeline because of the tolling due to the pandemic, the application for the extension was filed timely.
Correct. Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Commissioner Sullivan?
No questions.
Commissioner Long?
I just had a quick question, Susan. It's about the barge. When I think I was looking at the minutes from the 2019 hearing for the original filing, and it didn't mention a barge. So I was wondering what the change was that you folks thought a barge would be helpful. And it's just a question sincerely.
I think it's about access to the seawall and some of the docking area.
All right. And it says that in the documents for this extension, the barge will be secured to the floating docks, which I believe is on the southern side on the plan.
Mm-hmm.
Is that
yes.
right? Okay. Beautiful. Well, that's all I really wanted to know. Thank you, Susan.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Very impressive, Commissioner Long, going back for those minutes. Commissioner Wilson, did you also study the minutes from 2019?
Thank goodness for Commissioner Long's memory there. No questions. Thanks.
Thank you. Commissioner Conan.
No questions.
Thank you. Commissioner Richmond.
I'm just impressed. No questions.
Yeah, exactly. Commissioner Herbst.
Indeed. Nothing from me.
Oh, come on. You can pile on and embarrass him for being so diligent.
I want to know what he does for work all the time if he's got time to read all that stuff.
Exactly. Okay. So with that, Susan, it was a good point bringing up the barge. And it sounds like you've included in the materials, and I apologize, I'm not finding it right now, the means and methods for the operation of the barge. We can be assured that hydraulics will be secured, debris, and all the other things that we're concerned about.
Yes, the contractor actually has included information in our submission. It's Sea White Marine Inc.
Fantastic. Okay, thank you. Okay, so with that, I'd entertain a motion to issue an extension of the sort of conditions. I would just go to 3 years. That's what we can give you, and just in case.
That'd be great. Thank you.
So moved.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Commissioner Sullivan?
Aye.
Commissioner Long?
Aye.
Commissioner Wilson?
Aye.
Commissioner Conan?
Aye.
Commissioner Richmond?
Aye.
Commissioner Herbst?
Aye.
And I vote aye. That carries 7-0. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Good evening.
Good evening. There have been a number of continuances. Continued our notice of intent for DEP file number 0061704 and Boston file number 2020-007. DEP file number 0061772 and Boston file number 2021-010. DEP file number 0061961 and Boston file number 2023-051. We'll now begin our regular meeting. First item on the agenda is a request for a certificate of compliance for DEP file number 0061514 for the installation of the Boston Harbor Islands Mooring Field Program located off the shore of Gallops, Georges, and Spectacle Islands. Resource areas are land under ocean, a National Heritage Priority Habitat of rare species. Elena, I understand that you took a very nice field trip to go look at this today. When the weather was still nice. So what did you find?
We did, yeah. It was a great way to start our day. So we got to go out there. We found that the final counts of the moorings were 15 moorings at Spectacle Island, 11 moorings at Gallops Island, and 10 moorings at Georges Island. And we also got a little bit more information about what happens if something needs to be repaired. Any sort of continued maintenance of these moorings would not require them to do anything with the actual portion of it that is sort of in the land under ocean. It would all just be things that are done by either divers or potentially people going over in a boat and trying to kind of like reattach things. So nothing that would cause further impacts to any resource areas. And everything seemed good to go. So it was a great site visit, and we'd recommend issuing the COC for this project.
Fantastic. Thank you. Any questions from any of the commissioners? Okay, with that, I would entertain a motion to issue a certificate of compliance for DEP file number 0061514.
So moved.
Thank you. Commissioner Sullivan?
Aye.
Commissioner Long?
Aye.
Commissioner Wilson?
Aye.
Commissioner Conan?
Aye.
Commissioner Richmond,
Aye.
Commissioner Herbst.
Aye.
And I vote aye. That carries 7-0. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is ratification of the emergency certification issued to the Massachusetts Port Authority for sinkhole repair and backfill within the Boston Harbor Shipyard Marina at 256 Marginal Street in East Boston. Elena, what do you have on this?
Yeah, so we actually have the team here to present. For some context, we were notified about the sinkhole and went out to do a site visit and have issued the emergency cert for the work. I believe that the team here is going to talk the commission through the estimated timeline to get everything back into order. And I hope somebody from their team corrects me if I'm wrong, but I do believe they're also preparing an NOI. Excuse me, for any additional work that needs to be completed in order to fully mitigate the situation.
Oh, great. There you go. I see it's Erica and Marshall and Chris Bush. Okay. Floor is all yours.
Thank you, Chair Parker and the commission. As Elena said, we received a emergency cert. With me tonight is Marshall Greenland and Pam Carnevale with Massport, who is the property owner. Elena, you can go to the next slide, please, or whoever's controlling. Thank you. So a sinkhole opened and damaged an electrical conduit containing the main power feed to the marina and commercial fuel dock in the area just north of the Marina Piers. Massport declared a public health and safety emergency for the danger associated with the further undermining and obviously the electricity issues. And we received that emergency cert to repair and backfill the sinkhole. Elena, next slide, please. Thank you. The left image just shows the location of the sinkhole. The center image shows the location of the broken power line and the trench that was needed to locate it. And the right image just shows the work adjacent to the marina, and at the end of the pier is that commercial fuel dock. So in order to just ensure the public safety, the shipyard just put a fence around the area, located the area where there was damaged power, and currently there is temporary repairs so that the lived-on vessels in the marina are receiving power, as well as the commercial fuel dock. Next slide, please. So the existing wetland resource area at the site is land subject to coastal storm flowage, and then there's also the coastal bank buffer zone. Next slide, please. So for mitigation measures, we're going to be ensuring that, all of the resource areas are have minimal impacts, and where they're unavoidable, just having temporary work due to the nature of the site. And erosion controls were also placed around the soil stockpiles and then also covered by tarps. And as I already mentioned, the proponent fenced off the limit of work just to, ensure public safety. And then next slide, I will turn it over to Marshall, who's just going to go over the proposed schedule for these repairs.
Thanks, Erica. Good evening, everyone. So, yeah, this is just a kind of high-level overview of our schedule. So, 227, 321 last week, cleared out the debris, removed the damaged power, made everything safe, demoed some of the undermined concrete surface and asphalt. So 3-4 to 3-8 is this week. So kind of first step is to repair the timber deck that failed, which created the sinkhole. So we've been working on that. We actually located the failure today, so that was good. So we'll work the rest of the week to clear that up. We are working with the tides and the weather and everything else. Rain's held off enough this week, so it's been in our favor. So the plan is to finish up the floor repair this week. which will enable us to make the permanent repairs to the electric, so we can remove the temporary solution that we have right now. That's projected to take 4 to 5 days with our electrician. And then the following week, once that's repaired, we'll repair the concrete forms that support the pier deck and bulkheads that were either damaged in the sinkhole, or that some of them had to be demoed to access the failure in the floor. We'll encase the new electrical conduit in concrete. Again, weather and tides we're working against. But a week should be enough there. And then following that, just backfilling what was excavated, and replacing the concrete deck that either failed with the sinkhole or had to be demoed for the repairs. So that's kind of that's how we worked out the schedule, and it's been going on track. So
okay,
next slide.
Good. There we go. Okay, questions. So a few things. One is question for you, Marshall. Are you the manager at the marina?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. So why weren't we called before any work was done? How come staff? Because
yeah, I mean,
I want to preface this. This isn't the first time. So what's going on?
I mean, this was, I guess, just a short oversight. I know we kind of had electricity arcing, and the team kind of jumped on that. And once our communications throughout our teams and to me and everything else, we reached out to communicate to you. So yeah, I mean, just
it seems like, sorry to interrupt, but it seems like, so this is the second time this has happened within a sort of a short period of time. It seems like there's some training and education that needs to be done with your team. You're in a wetlands resource area, so any work that you want to do, you have to contact staff and determine whether it rises to the level of an NOI. I appreciate that this was a sudden event, but, to call staff is, the electricity didn't upset anyone's cell phone or anything like that. Just this is a message. This just needs to stop. Some sort of training has to be done because it happens again the third time. We will issue an enforcement order. I can guarantee that. Question for Massport. Erica said that you issued a declaration of a public health emergency. What does that look like? What is like the enabling statute or whatever that I didn't know that Massport had the ability to issue a declaration of a public health emergency or whatever the phrase was. Where does that come from?
I guess I'll jump in here. Good evening, Commissioner Parker, or Chair Parker. I think it was really just in reference to the Wetlands Protection Act regulation language, which specifies, with these emergency certs that work needs to be conducted by, some Department of the Commonwealth, and there needs to be, some health safety issue that it is grounded in. So I don't think it was referenced as a declaration. I think it was more just reiterating, citing that aspect of the regulations and that aspect of the request form.
Understood. So it was a determination, not a declaration. That's
I think
I heard. So I didn't understand that because it does have implications for us if you had that sort of authority.
No. Again, I think it was just in relation to, again, that the emergency cert form, if I recall correctly, needs to clearly state, what, division, subdivision of the Commonwealth is requesting the work to be done or doing the work. And, there's some bearing on health, safety. And again, the issue here being, power to the liveaboards and the fuel dock, was a safety issue.
Okay. Okay, I appreciate that. Okay, that's all I have. Oh, last thing is I know that when you were issued the emergency certification, I think the question was asked how long it will take you to do the work. And I think the answer was, I can't remember, maybe 10 days, 15 days. So in the emergency cert, it was referenced that you needed to do the work within 15 days. It sounds like it's more like you would need the whole 30 days that certs are good for. Do I understand that correctly?
We would need 30 days to complete and backfill the sinkhole.
Okay, so Elena, I think the process here is we would revise the emergency cert to take out that 14-day or whatever it was, the timeline that the work needs to be completed within. Does that make sense?
That makes sense. And I can also just check in tomorrow to make sure that we do that properly and that it's reflected accurately on the form.
Okay, I appreciate that. And we're going to be seeing a post-work NOI for this, right? Okay, good. Commissioner Sullivan, what do you have?
No questions.
Great. Commissioner Long.
Nothing for me. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Wilson.
None here either. Thanks.
Thank you. Commissioner Conan.
No questions. Thank you.
Commissioner Richmond.
I don't have any questions, but would certainly support your statement about the need for training.
Thank you. Commissioner Herbst.
I'm just wondering if I can't remember. Do we need to approve the one that was issued to the 15th or does that or is that not necessary?
Yeah, it's a good question. So Elena has asked us to ratify the emergency certification that's been issued. I think the process could be that we would ratify the emergency certification issued with a revision on the timeline. So in other words, in the emergency cert that was issued, she put in that they have within 15 days once they start the work to complete it. And it looks like it's more like it will take 30 days, which is the duration of the emergency certification in the first place.
Yeah, no, I just was wondering whether we need to approve this and then Elena needs to issue another one or
yeah,
just whether there's something.
My understanding is that there isn't specific guidance from DEP on this, and so I agree with Chair Parker's plan to perhaps have the motion be ratifying the emergency certification with the modification that it be extended out to the full 30 days.
Okay, great.
Okay, good. Thank you. So with that, I would entertain a motion to ratify the emergency certification that's been issued with the modification that the time period in which to perform the work is extended to, well, not extended, is for 30 days.
So moved.
Do you have a second?
Second.
Great, thank you. Commissioner Sullivan?
Aye.
Commissioner Long?
Aye.
Commissioner Wilson?
Aye.
Commissioner Conan?
Aye.
Commissioner Richmond?
Aye.
Commissioner Herbst?
Aye.
And I vote aye. That carries 7-0. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Elena, administrative updates.
We have none. We've covered all
Okay.
our business.
And we don't have any orders of conditions to vote on. So last item on the agenda is acceptance of the meeting minutes from February 1st, 2024. I was able to take a look at them. They were done excellently. There were just a few minor nits that I had to, that I made edits to. So with that, I'd entertain a motion to accept the meeting minutes from February 1st, 2024.
So moved.
Do we have a second? Please.
Second.
Thank you. Commissioner Sullivan?
Aye.
Commissioner Long?
Aye.
Commissioner Wilson?
Aye.
Commissioner Conant,
Aye.
Commissioner Richmond.
I'm going to abstain. I wasn't at the meeting.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Herbst.
Aye.
And I vote aye. So that carries 6-0 with 1 abstention. So with that, motion to adjourn by acclamation, and I'll go do that site visit over at the State Police headquarters over there on the water. How's that? And I'll report back next meeting.
Perfect.
Good night. Thank you.
Thank
Good night.
you.
Thanks,
Bye now.
all.
Good night.